But this is our tips, tricks and tools session, which is going to be the more tangible ideas and just sort of ways to approach growth that you can actually take away and do. So hopefully you will agree that the rest of the morning has been super, super useful in terms of thinking a bit more bigger picture. But actually this is a session that's going to share some ideas that can actually help you go and grow your unit. And there'll be time at the end for you to share some thoughts, some reflections, some ideas, all in one big idea boards that everybody can contribute to, that we'll then be able to share as well. And there'll be lots and lots of shared ideas and thoughts and learnings and reflections to take away. So I realised as I put this slide up that this is also the first time I'm actually introducing myself. It's been 3 years in this role now, and I think I still do it every single time, where unless there is somebody else to introduce me, I just completely forget to introduce myself. So hello, if you don't know me, I'm Emma Dixon, and I am the Assistant Chief Commissioner. So that's who I am, that's who's been waffling on at you all morning. So apologies if you didn't already know me and I failed to introduce myself. But as part of my role, I look after growth and retention, which is why obviously I'm doing this conference, and also engagement. So included in that is PR, communication, social media. So that's why I've really wanted to approach this as a bit more of an unconventional growth conference, growth training, and it be a little bit more about that sales and marketing aspect that James sort of so eloquently touched on, because that for me links perfectly into growth. You know, there's no growth if there isn't engagement and communication and really selling it, and vice versa. You know, part of showing off what we do inevitably just results in better growth down the line. So that's why we've linked them in together like this. But yeah, again, massive apologies for not introducing myself sooner. As I said, it's been 3 years and this is absolutely not the first time that I've forgotten to do that. But tips, tricks and tools. I do have a presentation for this, so just bear with me while I change which screen I am sharing. Here we go. Okay, so some tips for growth and growing guiding. Number one, and this would be my absolute main tip, is to think about recruitment all of the time and not just when it's urgent. As much as in that previous session I was saying about, you know, if there's a unit that's going to close and it's desperately in need of volunteers, and people generally respond well to that, you know, it's all about jumping in and saving something. But actually, the best thing we can do is never be in that emergency situation. And if we're really proactive all the time and identifying where there might potentially be weaknesses, if we know that we have a volunteer who's likely not to stay with us very long, or if we know that we don't have girls coming through the pipeline, if we're keeping an eye on things like that, then it avoids ever having to recruit in an emergency. Not is it only just part of solving that emergency. Part of what I hope I've done today is enthuse you about growth and actually go, we're not growing guiding because it's a chore and we have to. We're growing guiding because we are amazing and we offer fantastic opportunities for girls and young women. And we've heard from just a few of them. And actually growth is all about wanting to grow and wanting to offer these opportunities to the most people possible. And actually, if we're not thinking about recruitment all the time, then we're not best serving the girls and young women, because we're only going to be reaching them when we're desperate to. So absolute top tip is just to have this in your head all the time. Think about recruitment all of the time and not just when it's urgent. I can see Lisa as well in the bottom of my screen, and Rachel touched on our plan before, which was the document that kind of gives you lots of information, numbers wise, numerical data, for you to be able to keep an eye on where there's areas for growth, you know, where there are fewer girls on waiting lists or where there's more, where there's fewer volunteers to adult leaders, etc., etc. And that is a really, really useful tool, especially at some of the higher levels. So it comes down through region to county and then further down the line. And that's really, really useful for being able to identify where there might be potential problems coming up and avoid that urgent need to recruit. So obviously Rachel will send out her slides as well, which has more information on that. The county commissioners on the call should definitely know a lot about our plan. And hopefully it is now starting to reach more and more people as well. And that is, I think I saw Lisa comment in chat before, that it is in the pipeline to be a bit more accessible for everybody to pull that data as and when they need it. So as and when that comes around, I'm sure there'll be a lot more information about it and encouraging people everywhere at any level to utilize that. But yeah, absolute top tip. Get it in your head. Growing guiding is something that should happen because we want it to, and it should happen all the time. Tip number 2 is working together with local units. So if you're sat here because you're really, really struggling for girls, there might be a unit around the corner that has got a waiting list as long as their arm. And having that communication with local units and working together and sharing those girls, I think this is particularly important with girls, but also with volunteers. But actually, if there's hundreds of girls on a waiting list down the road and you're really struggling and there's a unit potentially having to close, then that just does not make sense. And I get that a lot of times people are really proud to have a waiting list and there's lots of girls wanting to come to their specific unit, but actually we need to be looking at this as a bit more bigger picture. And yes, it's fantastic that the girls want to join your unit, but actually we should be really, really passionate about them joining Girl Guiding, whether that's your unit or the unit down the road. And I think part of that is, if you're a commissioner, is having those conversations as well and supporting, but actually as a unit leader, sometimes being willing to let go of that waiting list. And yes, it can be a really big compliment if there's girls that are desperate to join yours where their friends are or where they've heard you do a pack holiday every year. But actually, in terms of us giving opportunities to girls, going right back to why we do what we do, it is far more important that we're getting them a space in Girl Guiding. And I know some of you will be sat here going, oh yeah, but it's not me, it's the parent or the girl who desperately wants to join this unit. Fair enough. But actually, do they know that they might never get a place in your unit? Are you being really honest that this waiting list is too long when they're not going to get a spot? Because sometimes people are honest about that, and then the parent or the girl can make a decision, but actually some people, and I've definitely been guilty of this when I was a bit more inexperienced and wasn't quite sure how waiting lists worked, etc. I've not been having that conversation with the person joining about just how long that wait might be. So being honest with them and saying, we're really, really sorry, but it might be a few years or never that your girl gets a spot in this unit, but I can recommend this unit down the road. They meet then, they meet at this time, and they'd be really lucky to have you. So having that conversation. And as I said, our plan as well, the tool that HQ pull from Go, is a really, really useful way of commissioners especially supporting this working together. Another top tip is being prepared to respond to inquiries. So if you've done that really, really, pleading post on a local Facebook group asking for volunteers, then making sure that you are prepared and do have time to respond to them. So think about the best time for you to post that ask, and making sure that you have enough time set aside to be able to respond to them. We heard from Rachel before that volunteer conversion is particularly good in the Northwest compared to other regions, but actually there's still a lot of room for improvement with it only sat at 47%. So absolutely go ahead and recruit and share on social media and do your recruitment stand, etc. But just think about how you're going to manage those inquiries and doing it at a time that you have the time to respond to those, because the worst thing that can happen is you put all of that effort into a Facebook post or into doing a talk at a community group or into holding a recruitment stand and then never having the time to follow up. Not only is that like a waste of your time having done the action in the first place, but it also leaves a really kind of negative impression of Girl Guiding on that inquirer. So please, of course, there's time commitment that goes into that, and as Rachel was saying, a lot of the work that's going on in the background is how we can reduce this admin burden on current volunteers. But in the meantime, just please make sure that you are thinking sensibly about when you do this recruitment and giving yourself time to respond. Saying yes to flexible volunteering. Now, flexible volunteering and flexible guiding can sort of have a bit of a negative connotation sometimes. It can be a bit of a dirty word in Girl Guiding. But actually, the best thing that anybody can do is to just be fully accepting of flexible volunteering. And by that, I mean being flexible about the time commitment that people can give. I think in this world, it's getting less and less likely that people can volunteer every week, or they can only come to pack holidays and that's something they're really interested in, or they are only interested in the outdoor stuff, or They are only willing to do the shopping for the unit and not actually come and help at all. So being flexible to both time commitment and to the roles that people do. And this should actually help you. It shouldn't be something that's going, oh, well, yeah, she can only volunteer, once a month or every so often. It's just not worth the hassle. It can be really tempting to say that, and especially if we're desperate for volunteers. And ultimately, yes, we do really want people who can be there every week, all the time, but we have to accept that that's just sometimes not realistic and not likely. And if people are willing to offer some time, any amount of time, however little that is, then we need to be saying yes to that and being as equally welcoming and as equally grateful for people giving that time. And again, Lisa is sat here. I feel like I'm stealing a lot of Lisa's ideas, but I'm talking. I'm going to steal one of your ideas again. And one thing that Lisa says to when she's doing growth trainings is look at the car park. Go out a few minutes before the end of your unit meeting and look in that car park. Who's sat there in the car waiting to pick their brownie up? Maybe that's a person who's doing a bit of working, squeezing it in the car, and they've got the laptop with them. And actually, they could be a really, really useful asset to your unit. That parent who's sat on their phone or their laptop in the car could be updating your program on Go for that week. They could be that person who's responding to volunteer inquiries or managing your waiting list, etc., etc. That mum who turns up really, really enthusiastically every week, really early with a girl, could she be the person that you're asking to do a bit of shopping for the unit and turning up every week with your shopping list there ready for you to go and save that as a job for you? There's so many different ways that we can think about flexible volunteering and put this ask to some parents who, as we said, quite often are sat there in the car park anyway. And how can we really, really tap into that time? Be welcoming. So it's all very well getting these people through their door. We've recruited them, we've responded to them, which is a win, and they've come to this unit meeting, and just making sure that we are being genuinely welcoming. And there's a lot of things that go into this, and there'll be a lot more guidance and really, really helpful resources as part of the Welcome Project. And I think sometimes we think we're doing well at this, but actually if we were to take a step back, we probably wouldn't be. And it's things like, does this new volunteer know where the craft cupboard is and where you keep the scissors? Because things like that as part of an induction are so easy to forget. You tell them all about the mandatory training that they'll have to do. You tell them about the trip that's coming up that they'd be welcome to come to. But these super basic things that make them feel like they're a really, really integral part of that unit and are fully equipped to do that role that you're asking them to do. Things like that can be really easy to miss. So I would take a step back, and I've done this and reflected on my own unit as to how you welcome a new volunteer. What is the essential information that they need to know to feel confident and empowered and equipped to do that role, as well as being part of the unit team. And things like immediately adding them to that volunteer WhatsApp group or your Facebook group, whatever that looks like for you, making sure you're adding them. Otherwise, if they get wind of the fact that there's a Brownie Leader WhatsApp group and it's week 3 and they're not in it, that doesn't really give them a good impression. And it might be that the person's just completely forgotten about it. And that's why I'm saying take a step back and think about all of those things that just come naturally to you, but that a new volunteer, it's really important for them to learn about. And I think actually one of the best things to do as well when we're doing our sales pitch that Jane talked about is to, as much as we talk about Girl Guiding being this amazing group and community, and it's incredible, and that's why we all love it, just being ever so slightly careful about how much you hammer home that point, because to somebody who, especially if they've never been part of Girl Guiding before, and they turn up to this unit meeting and it's all about how close everybody is and how much like a family it is, as lovely as you think that sounds, I think it can sometimes be a bit daunting and a bit overwhelming to people to just be met with that. So yes, talk about how great Girl Guiding is and how you meet friends and it's great, but just ever so slightly tone it back sometimes and listen to yourself. And as Jane said, if you're ever going to record this sales pitch and listen to it back, that's something that I would really encourage you to particularly pick up on, is just how open and welcoming do you make Girl Guiding feel? Or are you leaning a little bit too much on the point of it being so much like a community that actually it's a bit hard to get into that community? So just sort of something to be aware of. And then another top tip is be careful who you moan to. And as much as it is so important that everybody can have a moan and everybody has a support network, just think about who you're moaning to, because if that's your best friend, actually, is that the best person to moan to? Because she could be a potential volunteer. Or that person you sat next to on the bus and you might go, oh gosh, I've got a bit of brownies tonight and they've been a nightmare. Whatever it might be, they're both rubbish examples. But just think about who you moan to, and actually you moaning to them, as much as it's so important that you have that person that you can, think about the audience that you're moaning to, and actually, is that giving the right message across about girl guiding? And is your one moan potentially stopping that person from ever volunteering, because their lasting impression is you moaning to them about how awful that brownie meeting was? So I can't stress enough how important it is for you to be able to moan and have those frustrations, but think about where you're doing it. And especially on social media, I see a lot of times people using social media to moan about how difficult girl guiding is, which again, it absolutely is. It's frustrating at times, it's difficult, we all have our challenges, but your hundreds and hundreds of friends on Facebook who are equally hundreds and hundreds of potential volunteers aren't necessarily the right people to share that with every week. So again, I don't want to be too negative and too preachy, but I think that's something that people again can quite easily forget that they're doing. And it really can have quite negative impacts on recruitment further down the line if people are just thinking about, well, why would I go and help at that brownie unit because all she does is moan about it every week. You can see how it has an impact. Okay, moving on to tricks. And this was probably the most difficult section to fill out. When I called it tips, tricks and tools, it sounded really snazzy, really catchy. And then when I actually put the presentation together, it's quite difficult because there really aren't very many tricks. There aren't any things that you can do to wave a magic wand and solve all of your recruitment issues. So really you can argue that most of these are just tips as well. But I did try to pick out a couple of things that were maybe a little bit more unusual and could really be classed as tricks. And I've already revealed this one. I've messed up. Check the car park, which is what I saw when I saw Lisa's smiling face. But there are so many potential volunteers sat in that car park before or after brownies or guides, doing, as I said, you're updating Go, you're managing your waiting lists, you're doing your accounts, whatever that might be. There are people who can give literally 15 minutes while they're sat in the car. And of course, some of these people might have to have actual roles. But that shouldn't be a barrier to using these people and their time and their willingness to support the unit. The fact that their daughter's there, again, they maybe will only give you 2 or 3 years while their daughter's a brownie, but that is so much better than nothing. And then next 3 years come around and you check the car park again. So don't let the fact that they're a parent and they're not going to be around forever be a barrier to that. They might love it. They might stay on board as your unit treasurer forever because they've really, really enjoyed that. And some people literally love shopping. They might absolutely love going along to Tesco every week and buying the stuff for your weekly meetings. And it doesn't matter actually when Flossie's left, they'll just carry on doing it. They might not, but that's fine. You find somebody else. But checking the car park, having those conversations with people and really utilising those people who are already there right outside your unit and have that connection to your unit. Another trick is having a taster evening for waiting list girls, especially if you have a big waiting list, especially if you've already established that there isn't a unit down the road who's struggling for girls that you can't just send them to. You've got this waiting list, and really you could do with an extra volunteer to be able to take these girls in. Well, actually, running a taster evening and inviting the parents along is a great way for them to not only still be a bit enthused while they're on the waiting list and be excited about what they've got coming up for joining, but you can have that conversation with the parents and say, well, actually, we are on the lookout for another volunteer, and we'd be able to take all of these girls if we had that other volunteer. And again, I'm sure a lot of you do this. You have that conversation with the girls on the waiting list, but it is super important to do. It's great for the girls. They have a nice night or a nice afternoon if you do it like that. But I think it's really important to invite the parents and have that conversation with parents. And just a kind of bit of information to back that up as well is we send emails every quarter to parents of girls on the waiting list across the whole of the Northwest. And in that, we always put a little bit of an ask about one of the reasons your daughter might not be able to join is through lack of volunteers. Have you thought about volunteering? here's where to go, or you can speak to us, you can email us. And we always get volunteer inquiries off the back of that email. And yes, that's for the whole region. But what I'm saying is, if you have that more personal approach with your personal unit waiting list, I really think that there are some keen parents who would do anything to get their daughter into that unit. And again, fair enough, they might not be a forever volunteer, but going back to the point about embracing flexible guiding, it doesn't matter. They're a volunteer, however much time they give us for however long is so important. Another trick, do local companies offer volunteer leave? This is becoming more and more widespread. Companies getting really clued into their corporate social responsibility and offering paid volunteer leave. Some just a few days a year, but some weekly. Some companies offer people paid time weekly, an hour or so, to do volunteering. And are you tapping into that? Why not put Girl Guiding in the front of people's mind, to be the first organisation that somebody thinks of when their company offers them volunteer leave? LinkedIn, as we talked about before, would be a great way of exploring this, but also just that general social media posting, being visible, having these conversations with people so that, they join a new employer, they have an hour a week to be able to volunteer, have Girl Guiding be the first thing that comes to mind. So again, something that is quite a new concept really, but it is happening more and more, and let's do everything we can to make these people want to join Girl Guiding. And again, let's not treat them any differently because they're doing it through their employer. If they're willing to give some time and support the unit, we need to be absolutely accepting of that. So again, just something to think about. And this, we talked about this before, remote/hybrid working has made volunteering a lot more accessible. As I said, the Rainbow unit that meets at 5 o'clock, previously if somebody was in the office until 5 o'clock, was not really an option. Now, if that person is working from home, the minute they close their laptop, they can be out the door and at Rainbows. So I think especially for those younger sections, targeting people who are remote and hybrid working now is something definitely to look into, as well as people who are remote hybrid working and don't see anybody all day. They're missing that social connection of the office. For any section, coming along, if you've spent all day on a laptop, really using that and going, why not come and spend your evening volunteering with guides or with rangers, and tapping into that kind of professional audience of people who now either have the time to volunteer earlier in the evening or who have spent all day on a laptop not speaking to anybody and actually would really enjoy that community in the evenings. And then another trick, being visible. So that can either be being visible on social media, as we've talked about, but also just being visible in person. And for me in my unit, we always try once a term to organise a trip out, whether that be to the park, to the cinema, a walk around town, whatever that might be. And the girls are all there in uniform, walking around, being incredibly visible. And without fail, every time we do this, there are people who come up to us and ask about Girl Guiding and ask about brownies. Sometimes with the comments, does that really still exist? But other times it's people who genuinely didn't know we were just around in the area. They didn't know that there was a unit that was just down the road. And the conversations that you have out of being visible, as well as just the associations, not necessarily people who are brave enough to come up and talk to you, but who notice you, again, in terms of that long-term strategy, is incredibly important. So just something that you can do dead easily, incorporate it into your program if you don't already, trips that put you into the community, and being really visible. On that as well, just going back, there is a screening of Matilda coming up. I'm sure lots and lots of people will be going to that. At the previous growth training that I did, it was Encanto coming up, and I talked about that and how thousands and hundreds of girls descending on local cinemas is an amazing recruitment opportunity. Not just in terms of, as I said, being visible, but actually in terms of the amount of parents dropping off at once. And if you've got any capacity to work together, if you've got a district go into the cinema, however it is, whether it's just some local units, asking Odeon whether there's potential to have a recruitment stand at that. And as parents are coming in and dropping off their daughters, having that there ready to have the conversations And quite often it might be somebody's first real perception of girl guiding being as big as it is. You know, they drop their daughter off every week, but actually this is the first time they're seeing what girl guiding is about. And having that recruitment stall at Matilda at the cinema, again, it might be that you get one person out of a couple of hundred, but that is one person. And the conversations that you'll have, and a lot of parents will be wanting to have that conversation. You know, they'll drop their daughter off, as I said, and it'd be, oh my goodness, how many people are there here? And as long as you've got that official person who's there ready to have those conversations, that is an incredibly exciting opportunity to be talking to that audience. So if you've got time, you've got a couple of weeks, think about arranging that for going to Matilda and using that as a recruitment opportunity. Okay, and then finally, moving on to tools. I'm going to do a bit of a whistle-stop tour here, and then any links, any documents, anything really important, I will share afterwards with you all. So don't worry about scribbling this down and trying to take links and things. That will be shared afterwards. But firstly, plug in our growth challenge. We do have an existing growth challenge in Girl Guiding North West England, and this is something that you can either do just by yourself, you know, if you're a volunteer trying to recruit other volunteers, or actually you can do it in your units and encourage girls to be getting involved in this as well. And there is loads and loads of ideas in this. So if you come today and feel like I haven't shared enough of the more like basic ideas with you, then this is the place to go. There are loads and loads of ideas in this. And as I said, a great way to get your girls involved in terms of having them writing articles for newspapers, them practicing their sales pitches, them doing letter drops around estates, things like that. So definitely have a look at this growth challenge if you haven't already. Banners and freebies that are available at Region. We have a whole host of pull-up banners and lots of freebies that we produce that people really don't make enough use out of. So plug in that here. If you are doing a recruitment stand, whether that is something at Matilda and it's a bit more local, or whether that is a county doing a recruitment event, or a division going to an open day somewhere, please get in touch with us at Region and we can loan out banners. There's lots of different ones for you to use, some girl specific, some volunteer specific, some just general, and having that really visual thing at the back of your recruitment stand is just something that's going to make you stand out from all of the other tables. And freebies, we have I was about to say we have nail files. They've just gone. They were a massive success at a recent event, but we definitely have pens and other freebies that are in the pipeline. So if you have any recruitment stand and other people are going to have freebies and you're thinking, oh gosh, how can I compete, what can I do, then please just let us know, and we will be able to give you some freebies to be able to hand out. So make use of that on offer at Region. We have a sort of tips and tricks document that we've produced at Region, so ideas for recruiting volunteers, for young leaders and for young members. So this is on our website. As I said, I will link through to this as well, so you don't have to dig around for it. But this is really, as well as your growth challenge, your place to go for your dead straightforward ideas. A lot of it will be things that you've done, you've tried, you either know work or don't work, but I'm sure there will be new things in that you haven't thought of before. So that is a really, really useful document to look at. And equally, if you read that and there's something on it that you've done that isn't on there, then please let us know and we will absolutely add that to the document, and it can be a really shared pool of ideas from everybody. This video is on our YouTube channel. This was from a series of trainings that we did last year, or maybe even the year before, where we heard from different people in different roles all across the region. And one of the videos we heard from some volunteers in Greater Manchester West County who worked in growth and in social media and PR. And they talked about some of the things that they've done to run a really successful recruitment campaign, really linking in your traditional growth and your more untraditional, unconventional PR and comms aspect of this. So that is a really, really useful video to check out. As I said, it's on our YouTube channel. I will also provide the link. But their county volunteer team who look after that talked through how they had so much success in their volunteer recruitment campaign. As well, there are recruitment campaign toolkits that are produced by HQ for every recruitment campaign that they do. So there will be one upcoming that there's basically constantly they're running different recruitment campaigns, and you will always get an email through when there is a new recruitment campaign that started, and it will always link through to the recruitment campaign toolkit. So do check them out. They have all of the different assets, so the videos, the posts, the photos, everything you could possibly want to be able to take Girl Guiding's resources and put them on your own channels. So have a look at those. As I said, if you're doing a Facebook post and you're a bit struggling for what to include with it, going back and having a look at previous recruitment campaigns, all of the assets are still there, and you can use those in your social media recruitment campaigns. Our plan, so we've already talked about this. This is the spreadsheet that comes out, and it will give you numerical evidence, data to sort of help you with your growth planning. It's super useful. There will hopefully be more trainings. I'm looking at Lisa, I don't know whether there will be. Yeah, there will be. So as this rolls out more locally and is available to more local people beyond it being disseminated down, this is definitely something to look out for. If you have never seen our plan, it is meant to be being disseminated down through different channels, but if you still haven't had it, then please do let us know, and I will make an effort to get it to you directly. If there are people who are super interested in this and are very data minded, then I would absolutely love to share this with you directly, so let me know. There is also another resource called Our Plan, which is a bit of an older one, but it is like a document basically, which will ask you questions about your unit, your district, in terms of how healthy your girl numbers are, how healthy your volunteer numbers are, what your unit leader's situation is, what your adult leader situation is, all sorts of different stuff. And it's essentially like the data version of Our Plan, but if you're completely not data minded, it asks it you in a bit more of a question-based format for you just to think about your own area and your own understanding of your area. And again, I will provide the link to that document as well, which is super helpful in planning for where you've got areas for weakness and where you need to be focusing on recruiting. And then finally, Rachel talked about this right at the start, and I was hoping she wouldn't spoil it because it was my very last point. And thankfully she didn't touch too much on it, but there is a Growth Network Facebook group, which anybody can join. It's called Girl Guiding Membership and Growth Network Facebook group. So you can search that now if you want. Also, I will link to it as well so that you can join that. And that has got people who are interested in growth enthusiasts from all across the UK who can either be sharing ideas, asking questions, people helping each other. Rachel is in that group as well. So every time there's an update from HQ, you'll be the first to hear that from Rachel. She'll share, the recruitment campaign directly from Girl Guiding, as well as if there's any opportunities to get more involved in testing things out, if there's opportunities to try out aspects of the Welcome Project, the digital tool. So that is a really useful group to join. If you've never heard of it, if you're not already a member, then an easy win is joining that group. Have a scroll back, search it for different ideas, and then you'll be in it as well for future reference. And then finally, which I wanted to talk about, and Catherine as well, our Deputy Chief Commissioner, is on the call today. So I'm going to invite Catherine to unmute herself as well. But I'm very aware that I've talked all morning about growth and about why we want to be growing guiding and how important it is to be offering these opportunities to as many young members as possible. And I'm aware that whenever we talk about growth, we are also talking essentially about a more expensive subscription bill. And I have put here, don't let subscriptions be a tax on growth. And I feel really strongly about this. And I know, as a unit leader myself, you can feel it. If you take on that other volunteer or that other girl just before subscriptions, that means extra heads to be paid for. But we need to be moving away from that attitude. And we should absolutely not be not recruiting or not moving somebody up to the next section just because of subscriptions, because there is absolutely no reason not to. I've put here about budgeting, but also there's so much support available that please never ever let the thought of subscriptions be a barrier to you recruiting, taking on new volunteers, taking on new girls. And I'm going to hand over to Catherine, who can talk a little bit more about what that support looks like and how you should be accessing it. But if there's one thing you take away from today, I mean, there's lots of things I hope you take away, but please never ever worry about growing guiding, increasing your subscription bill. It will, obviously, that's the way we work, but it should not be a barrier. So over to Catherine. I will spotlight you.
Thank you. There's been some conversations in the chat anyway about exactly that having flexible volunteering increases your membership subscription on a unit. And I can see that other volunteers have suggested some alternatives, that they become a recognized volunteer at a district or a division level. And the other side to say about flexible volunteering is you can share it. So that parent who might be very happy to do the accounts may be able to do the accounts for more than one unit. So share. And that's really at the other side of that flexibility, that we don't have to have one individual doing the same thing for every and replicating it across every single unit. So think about things as well, flexibly from our needs and how we can help each other. As for funding, there is plenty of funding around. Start off by looking at what is on the national website. There was a commissioner call quite recently, and there was quite a lot of information provided at that. And I know that some of you on this call now saw that event and heard some of those options available to us. So check there. And then at a region level, we have funding available, but equally your district, your division, your county all have help and support if you are going to struggle. And we know that we are in a very much a difficult situation at the moment with this financial cost of living crisis. So we will help. We've got funds set aside, and it is a set aside at every single level. We've got a dedicated form that's on the website at region to talk you through how to apply for some funding. Our funding will cover subscription if you need it. We will need some evidence. We do want to make sure that this isn't somebody who's actually got the funding already and they just want a little bit more. So we do want to make sure that we target our funding appropriately, and that's going to happen at every level, but we do want to support. So please take a look at how we can help you, and please don't let membership subscriptions be a tax on growth. There is a lot of funding out there. We've had our funding for a couple of years now, simply because we anticipated coming out of COVID, we would see units struggling, and we know that that's happened. But now we're coming to the position where we're starting to grow, and we need to make sure that we fund that growth. That's why we've set aside funding at region level and why there's funding at different levels, because ultimately the more we grow, the lower actually our subscriptions will be, because if we can share the burden across more members, it means that those future increases will not be of the scale that we've had to do in the last couple of years. So growth actually means the subscriptions will be modest in future in when it comes to increasing. A couple of things that got mentioned. Funding growth from one of the first things that was talking about the DCMS funding. This is being applied for nationally. So London have applied for substantial funding from the DCMS. The first bit of that we have got, and that is goes to London, and London will distribute it to the regions, and then we will distribute it out. The first bit of funding was to open new units, but they were only at guide and range level. So it was either to open a new unit or to reopen something that had been closed. So those that maybe got suspended during COVID, if they're being reopened, that funding is going to be made available. Essentially, we pay for it at region, and then we're claiming it back from nationally. So if you have a unit in that situation, we've identified some already, but if you know of any more, please let us know, because we've got some help for you. Yes, it was for guiding range units in deprived areas. The second lot of funding that is being applied for currently at a national level If that is successful, that's going to be very much focused at waiting lists, and that will be much broader in scope. So it won't have the deprivation requirements, and it will be for all ages. It will include brownies and rainbows. So it will be much wider. I noticed, I'm just trying to pick up some comments in the chat, Emma. How do we apply for funding, please? So as I say, if you go on the region Girl Guiding Northwest England on our website, you'll find some information there, and there is a form if you want region funding. But I would start by locally. As a unit, you should be talking to your district or your division, depending on how you're arranged, and then going up to your county, and then ultimately coming to us, because there are different pots for different things. So I would start locally, but definitely have a look on our region website.
Yeah, and I will link through to that. And as Catherine said, so there is a little bit of a form, and one of the things we ask is whether you've already tried local levels, just to make sure that it's not even just that we make sure you're using somebody else's pot before ours. It's so making sure that everybody along that line knows that there's a unit who's in need. You know, if you come straight to region, then the district commissioner, the division commissioner isn't aware that that unit is struggling necessarily. So it's as much as kind of going through the right chain of support, but actually making sure that everybody is aware who needs to be, that support is needed. But yeah, we'll make sure that that is linked through to in all of the information that goes out afterwards. And every year we say that, you know, the whole pot isn't used up. We have money that we sit on. So if you're sitting there going, oh, I'm not even going to bother applying because I wouldn't get it, wipe that thought, because we have more money than we give out usually. So if you're going to struggle, don't struggle. The support is there, is the main message to get across on that.
And this year, as we've done in previous years, we set our budget. And I'm chair of finance for the region, and so it's really important that we set a budget. But it's equally, I'm also a rainbow leader, and it's really important that we sit down and do our budget. So at every level, you need to know what you need as your income and what is going to be needed as your expenses. But it's really important that you do have that budget, and you know then what you've got, that you've got that planning. And I also have to say, please don't sell yourselves short. Set a reasonable subscription for your teams and for your units, however you're going to do it, whether it's weekly or monthly or termly. Set something that's reasonable. You know, we constantly try and sell ourselves really short, and you know, we're doing things on a shoestring. You want to have girls to have a really good experience, and that's one of the best ways of encouraging growth, because they go to school and say, we did this, we did that, we went here, we went there. And that's really important, because that's one of the best ways that we will get our members. And that's why we set at region our budget. We have set it that if necessary, we will dip into our reserves in the next couple of years, because growth is absolutely vital if we are going to keep going for the next 100 years. So it's really important that we do grow. That's why we've put so much into growth and retention, because we have to grow or we will not be around in another 100 years. And we are really trustees, every single one of us. We're trustees of guiding, and everything we do is going to be the legacy we leave. Back to you, Emma. Have I said enough?
That is perfect. Yeah, thank you very much. So I thought that was really, really important to finish on. Obviously, everything we've talked about is really, really important, but I completely get that everything that we do has that financial implication. But it shouldn't be a worry for you, and it should not be a reason for you not to grow your unit. So please, 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 if you take away one thing, it's carry on growing your unit all throughout the year, you know, even in the run up to subscriptions, and don't worry about that extra cost, because there is support out there. Either if you can't manage that in your unit, there's external support, or as Catherine said, you know, budget, ask for the right amount of money. If you need to ask for a joining fee to cover that just before subscriptions, then do that. You know, there's absolutely no shame in asking the people joining us for money to support that cost of them being a member. And really that's what it is as well. You know, we call it subscriptions, but it's a membership fee to Girl Guiding, and having that conversation and explaining what that money is covering with that new starter is all you need to do. And yeah, the support is there. So please, please, please use the support, and don't let that be a tax on growth. So we are now pretty much at the end of the day. I'm aware there's been loads and loads of things that have come in throughout that as I was talking that I couldn't see.